Hey, Renee.
Hi, Annette.
Today we're going to talk about victim mentality just a little bit in here. Some people can find them easily, maybe at work, or they can name off a friend that they know always seems to be the victim in some situation. It's a habit that some people will create in their life where it seems like when you talk with them, if you ask them, how's it going? How you doing? You haven't seen them for a while. And
Yeah.
when they start talking, you realize every single time you talk to them, it's always the world against them. This
Mm.
happened to them. This negative, this negative, this negative constantly. And then if they even bother to ask, well, how are you, Renee? Type thing. I'm sure you never had anything like that happen to you. And you say, actually, I did. I broke my ankle like you broke your ankle, type thing. I'm sure it's different for both of us. And then they up it an ante. But yeah, and then they got to like go a second layer on top because
Yeah.
they got to have the worst situation.
Mm.
They got to be the victim. You can't just be a victim because they're a victim. No, they, they got to up the ante on it and
Yeah.
go that
To
extra
be the worst
mile.
in the room.
And by the way, none of it is ever their fault. Man, I
Mm.
had such a hard week at work. My boss piled work on top of me and work on top of me and work on top of me, that type of thing. And they just go on and on. And it was due on Thursday, and I didn't get a chance to touch it until Thursday morning. And you're wondering in the background because you've heard their stories before. It's not the first time that they've had a deadline that they started the day that the item was due.
Yeah.
Um,
The self-sabotage.
that they're doing to themselves. And if you even dare to walk that line, to mention to them of how possibly you're trying to solve it a little bit for them and you get bit right away, you already know they're not interested in it being solved.
Yeah.
Yeah, your face tells it all.
But I'm now recalling someone, yes,
Okay.
where I used to live. Yeah. It was every time, every conversation, it seemed like something new blew up. Yeah.
And their problems are very complicated usually.
Mm, yeah.
But the problem with the victim mentality is if I had a group of people I was working with, and let's say we were working on the hope and healing from sexual abuse, to have somebody in there playing a strong victim role. Not everybody who's in that group was a victim of sexual abuse. Okay.
Right.
But
Yeah.
if they have that super strong, woe is me outlook continually wearing people down, it will damage the morale of the group. I'm not saying you have to
Mm.
go in there and be a Pollyanna, but at the same time, the world can't still always be about you.
Yeah.
A good example might be, and you could help me on this, when you were abused and then the light came to it and you were taken to the police department and then you got put into a group and all, there was a lot of attention that was happening to you at that time because you needed attention on you. It would be the
Right.
same as one of your grandchildren getting hurt and we needed to call an ambulance. That would call attention to them, an ambulance. And then they had
Yeah.
to go to the hospital and all these things that all this attention was being focused on that. It's due to them at that point because there's an emergency, there's something that has happened.
They need the
But for it
help.
to
Yeah.
stay at a 10 3 years later would be super unhealthy for that grandchild.
Yeah.
So how did it work for you? Did it go to a 10? The alarms all went off. The focus went on you.
Rephrase the question.
Well, when you had mentioned to your mom that you had been abused, it seemed like all of a
Right.
sudden action was taking place.
True. True. The actions were not only running us to the police department, it was then finding a safe place, brothers and sisters to stay, how to address it, how is my mom going to address it with my father? but it was protecting Renee, protecting the kids. Yeah, there was a lot of attention at that time, I would say, for sure.
It
Getting
went
me
up to a
help, getting
10.
me safety. Yeah.
It
So it
wasn't
was a
an
little bit,
everyday of school type situation that happened.
not at all. It wasn't a normal get on the bus and come home. No, it was, we're going to rush. We're going to take care of this. We're going to solve something. And yeah, I, not that I wanted to be the person of attention, but yeah, I kind of had
Right.
to be because I had to tell the story a few times, or I had to be shipped somewhere, taken to somebody's house that I could spend the night at. They needed to know the story by my mom to know why is she spending the night, kind of thing. So yeah, my story, I was kind of the subject for that week.
But it bumped your life to a 10, and
Yeah.
eventually it went back down again. Were you still a victim? Yes.
Yeah.
You were a victim that was now going into counseling. You were a victim that was now going in to receive help in different ways.
Right.
The goal, which was really important to me if I was a counselor, was to not keep you at that victim mentality, though.
Yeah. It was like that hyper drive. There was just a lot more intensity during that time. I'm remembering just that intensity for that week or so. And yeah, I remember even afterwards, it's still being kind of up there in the sense of, well, now that it's out, I want to get it out. I want people to know. I want to tell people, I want to deal with this. I want to get it over with. Ugh. So it was heavy intention with the counselors. I had the one-on-one and I had the group therapy. And even a frustration of folks that didn't want to in the group session. They didn't want to work through their stuff. It was like, come on already. But it wasn't because I was in a victim mentality anymore. But I can say there were some times I was probably guilty of it because I just wanted to be heard. I wanted to be known in the room as somebody also that went through something rough, but not to one up anybody, or to be the
Right.
biggest whine to get the most attention. I don't mean it in a negative way, but when you are a victim of something like this, you could go in that trajectory to get the attention, the extra attention, I could say. You could play that card a lot
And
to get more handouts
getting
or
that
to get
limelight
more.
sometimes feeds a person who feels very alone. But in the end, they end up sitting there going, well, they're only friends with me because they felt sorry for me, or they're only doing this because they don't want to leave me out. They're only doing this because of whatever it is.
Mhm.
So in the end, all their guilting that they did and all their attention grabbing that they did, the lights eventually get turned off at night.
Yeah, that's true.
People go to bed.
Yeah.
And so the damage becomes when they constantly want to keep turning the light on in the middle of the night, if you want to call it that. If the next day you go to work and again, they're blaming others for things that should be their responsibility. To me, that's that victim mentality leaking out, but in a different way. They were responsible for a certain thing. They blew it. They need to apologize. But instead of that, they're saying, well, it's because of this person or that person or whatever it is. And that's a sure sign that they're going back into that victim mentality again.
True. It's true. It shows up in a lot of different ways.
Yeah.
It does.
Relationships. You could see it in relationships where I could look at a couple and go, wow, they got a great marriage and they seem a lot of fun, that type of thing. And then all of a sudden, maybe I'm talking to the woman separate and she's blaming her husband for her acting a certain way, or she's blaming this for that, when it's like, no, you're responsible for your own actions.
Yeah.
You're responsible for how you want to react, what attitude you want to go ahead and take, all of
Right.
that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I've heard that as well. A lot of blame on the spouse.
It's easier.
Yeah. I'm here because of I got a bad mood because he did that, whatever, or I can't do this because that person does this, the can'ts and or I won'ts. And it looks like whining.
It looks
It
like
looks
whining.
like it looks like you're pointing the finger elsewhere, that you're the perfect person and everything else is falling apart around you, but you've had nothing to do with it.
Yeah, you have no control. Everybody else seems to be ruining my life, but
That's a good way of putting it. Yeah.
I
Yeah.
have no control type thing. And it kind of goes back to that control part and not being willing to trust, which is a toughie, which can again be formed by those who've been sexually abused because of all of that has happened, because trust has been broken. You name it.
Yeah. Yeah.
So to me, it's always good to look for the signs. We've talked about a few of them. And when someone doesn't want to take responsibility, I try to pick it up and put it in their hands. And if they drop it because they're not going to touch it, I already know where I stand and where they want to stand.
Yeah. Well, what I learned, I hope this works with this, but what I learned was a lot of times when those of us who are the friend or the family of someone who's victim mentality, it is, you're in that conversation and maybe they want to make you do all the work instead of them, because this happens too with it, or blame. It's at the end of the conversation, making sure the ball's always in their hands, making sure the ball's always in their court, and you're not the one enabling that behavior. I've had to learn that one because I was one that enabled that behavior when I was counseling people at the very beginning, learning how to coach and learning how to be a discipler. You know, there was some enabling there, taking them to the court when they could have done it themselves, listening and what's the word? Accepting that it was somebody else that was to blame, the person that was maybe the domestic abuser or whatever, instead of what were they still doing? Still living with that person. What were they still doing?
Well,
okay. This part
yes,
could be
always leaving the ball back in their court. And if they decide to drop it, then let it fall to the ground.
Yeah, it's not our job to pick it up and do it for them and enable. Tough lesson.
And really stay away from feeling sorry for them. And the only way I was able to, I had to change my language. So Renee, if you were to have called me and said, or you're calling me and you're drunk, you're just really drunk on the phone and you're crying, and I realized at that time we're not going to get very far because you're not exactly in your right mind. Let's put it that way.
Yeah.
Then I would go ahead and excuse myself and say, we'll talk tomorrow. I'll make sure to text you that we're going to talk tomorrow, whatever it is, and then hang up the phone. So when we talk the next day and you tell me, yeah, I was so upset, I started drinking and then I ended up drinking the whole bottle of wine because, and then you blame somebody else. They did this. They said this. It was so heartless. They did that type of thing. Again, you're blaming somebody else.
Or
No, what they
something
did
else.
was heartless. Yes. And all of that took place, but it was your choice to choose that crutch.
Right. Right.
And that's the part I want to talk to you about, is that crutch that you chose, because it wasn't a healthy one. It's one that took you down the road of being a victim again. So you didn't want to take responsibility.
Yeah.
So that's where I would go ahead and walk it so they could see that they do have a choice for success, even in the most painful moments. And they got to be careful. But if they know it ahead of time, that pain will scream louder. Pain will scream louder than the success answer.
And pain will draw them in. I know that
And
sounds
when you're
weird.
in pain, you
but
can't make great decisions.
Right.
So if Renee, all of a sudden you slammed your finger in the door, you're not going to, if I start asking you questions, what's on your shopping list? You're holding your hand, jumping up and down. You're in extreme pain. Pain's not the time to make a decision. I'm not going to drink anymore. Taking
Right.
all the after that incident where you said you lost control, and this is all made up, by the way. Renee's never done this to me. Okay. But I'm
Can't
pretending
stand
that she called
alcohol.
me, she
Yeah.
drank the whole bottle of wine. The answer now is to never have wine in her house again because she may lose control like that again. And it was not a great moment. And we're going to
No.
agree that it wasn't a great moment. But we need to, before she's in pain the next time, have it not available, have it not as a choice. What is she going to do? Let's walk through some situations. What can we do? Because you are going to eventually be in pain again. Someone eventually is going to hurt your feelings again.
Yeah. Yeah. Or something of life.
Something of life. You never know what it is.
Yeah.
It's going to happen. It's inevitable. So that's why it needs to be planned ahead of time.
Yeah.
So you could walk that successful road while still being in pain, because
Yeah.
pain is going to scream loud.
Just
All I
wanted to
could think
joke
of
that.
is, yeah, childbirth, and you hear women screaming, that type of thing. That's the only thing that's going to my mind right now. Pain is loud, and it seems like when a woman is going to have a kid, there's only one thing on their mind.
Yeah.
Okay. And they're very focused on that. But if we could be that focused on our success,
True.
on handling a crisis, on handling a painful word that just came out of nowhere, that just was a sucker punch that you didn't expect. And I received a sucker punch like 2 months ago, but I've had enough of them. And I've had enough success to know to go to Jesus right away.
Amen.
It hurts. It hurts when I go to him. It hurts when I throw myself down to be held by him. But that's the place for me to be. And in that pain, that's when I could start worshiping. That's when I can be thankful. But I've had to practice it and practice it.
And find your victory.
Yes. Those painful moments, those maybe valleys, which are longer, right, are the place where growth is going to come. So though I don't care for valleys, I'll be really honest, I don't care for painful moments.
Who does?
But I'm much more grateful and thankful for them because I know God's going to do something through that. I know there's going to be growth. I know there's going to be an upward motion. And I'm not going to take that victim mentality and go down to that fetal position and blame the world.
Yeah. And let it spiral like it just, when you say it
Let
screams so loud, it just.
Let me add to it bad decisions.
Yeah.
Taking drugs, start cutting again, drinking heavily, you name it. That's just not going to help it at all.
No, no. And being in that mental space either is not, it's not healthy.
It's not. Absolutely.
Not at all. It's not enticing.
It doesn't help the pain.
No, right?
No, it doesn't. It doesn't. It's
but
still
you'll
there.
turn to coping. People will turn to coping because they think that's the easier out. It's the easier option.
It is at the moment. It is at the moment. Because I know from my cutting years, it was the fast solving. It was instant relief.
Yeah.
But it wasn't lasting. And it only made it longer and harder for me to go ahead and get the ultimate relief and healing that I needed, so I didn't have to constantly have that pain.
Right. It's almost like it just piled the dirt. Like if you kind of, what's the word? Went to Jesus sooner, that hill that could trip you up, you could leap over it easier. The sooner, the easier, you know?
Yes.
But the more denying.
Let's throw 30 something years on top of that. And then you got a very big wound.
Yeah. And a big pile of dirt there that you're trying to figure out, okay, how do I maneuver through that? It gets a little bit harder.
It gets really hard.
Harder to dig out, above, can't go over it, can't go under it, can't go, you know what I mean?
Reach out for help if that's something that you're dealing with. If you can relate to what Renee has just said, definitely reach out to help.
Big time. Because
Absolutely.
the help will get you out. Jesus
Jesus is
can get
there.
you out. Yeah,
Yes.
I've seen it. And I want it. I want it for those who are in my life. I want it for those that are in the victim mentality, those that are in the addictions, those that are doing the, excuse me for saying this, the drama life.
Yeah.
I want better for them because I love them. And I know there's freedom. I was just thinking about that this week. Is like, I am grateful for where I am today. I am grateful for how God has brought healing to my life. Was it easy at the beginning to tell? No. Was it easy to be in counseling sessions every week? Not always. Did I like my counselors? Not always, because they made you answer questions and sometimes I didn't want to answer them, But did it help bring my healing? Absolutely. Did those people that God surrounded me with bring healing as well? Absolutely. I wouldn't be the sharpness I am now. I still got some sharpening to do, but I would not have met you, Annette. I would not have had the people that are in my corner rooting me on and helping me and calling me out and sharpening me. I would not be the woman I am today if I didn't do that hard work and admitting where I was playing drama or victim mentality or trying to go down a certain road. It's a dead end.
Yeah.
I'll just tell you that
end.
right now. It's a dead end.
Well, thanks for talking to me about it.
Absolutely.